Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Vintage Motocross Radio. I'm your host, Joe Abadi. My guest today began as a racer in Southern California in the 1960s. His skill as an engine tuner led him to a career as a factory mechanic for Jim Pomeroy at both the Honda and Bultaco race teams. His foresight in seeing the need for a motorcycle industry to have professionally trained mechanics led him to create the Motorcycle Mechanics Institute. It's my pleasure to be speaking today with my guest, Mr. Arnie Beaman. Arnie, are you there?
Hi, Joe. How are you?
I'm doing great, Arnie. Thanks for taking the time to speak to us today.
Not a problem.
Hey, Arnie, let's get right into it. Why don't you tell me, or tell everybody here, how did you first get involved in racing, and was it motorcycle racing first, or how did it all come about?
Actually, not. I came home actually from the Army, and wanted to continue my college, and really didn't know what to do, and just as a kid, hanging out and doing all this typical things of looking at sports.
Okay.
And me and a friend of mine went to a NASCAR race in California, and decided to see what the NASCAR boys did. And we're sitting at that fence, and a guy came over on the other side of the fence, which was in the pit area. We were oohing on over all the cars, and he says, "Hey, you guys want to help us work in the pits? We have I have a driver we're kind of short on pit crew." And I looked at my buddy, and he looked at me and said, "Yeah."
And this is at a NASCAR race?
Yeah, it was car number 79, Frank Warren.
Okay.
Yeah, he drove for, he was an independent, but under the table he got help by the petties. And so they looked at me, and when I got in the pits, and I was like at cloud 9, looking at all these hot cars. And he said, "You're going to be a tire guy. You're going to change tires." And I looked at my buddy, he was a really tall kid. He said, "You're going to pick up those cans and give us fuel." He says, "And I'll tell you how to do it." So, it was fun. It was a lot of work. We had a great time. And went home and, high-fiving each other. Thought, man, we got to work in NASCAR. About a week later, Frank Warren called me and says, "Would you like to come to Augusta, Georgia, where the shop is, and work with me? You and your friend." My friend's name was Alice Robertson, by the way, if he's listening. And so we did. We packed up my little van and hooked off, and we were there for a year, through the whole series. And the reason I brought that up is I got the opportunity to work for the Petties for 2 weeks because Frank got hurt in the middle of the year at Daytona, broke his leg. And I remember Papa Petty telling me, no matter what we do in motorsports, nothing replaces horsepower. I want you to remember that. No matter what kind of sport you're in, you can have the best driver in the world without any horsepower, and they'll finish mid-pack. And he says, I can get, a mid-pack driver and give him all the horsepower more than anybody else, and I'll have him to win the circle. And I went home with that and never forgot it. When I got home, back to California, all my buddies, I wanted to race. I was just anxious to race something. I thought we were going to race cars. But all my buddies had dirt bikes. And in the same town I grew up in was Sunland to Hunga, California. About a mile away from me was, which became a good friend of mine, was Briar Holcomb. And Briar was racing Pentons and CZs and everything, that he could get his hands on. He had like 3 sponsors at one time. 3 different bikes racing desert and motocross.
Wow.
And he says, "Yeah, buy a dirt bike." I thought, yeah, that'd be cool. I can ride the motorcycles. And next thing I knew, I went out and bought I financed a DT1 Yamaha. And, figured I would strip the lights off and go racing. Well, that was a disaster because I think my first race was maybe second to last. Didn't realize what motocross was all about until then.
What track was it?
He took me under his wing, and we went riding a lot. I got better as things turned out. I was doing pretty well. And he introduced me to a guy named E.C. Burton.
Okay.
Which is out of California. And I remember what the Pennies told me, and E.C. Burton was well known for putting a lot of horsepower in bikes.
Yes.
So he did my DT1 for me, and the Petties were right. I went from mid-pack to top 5 in every race I was at. Won a bunch of of races in novice, and then went into intermediate, and won a bunch of races there. Breyer helped me a lot. So that's kind of how I started and got into motorcycling.
So let me ask you this, Arnie. I mean, you began probably porting and doing all sorts of things that E.C. Burt had taught you to do, and you began riding better. Did you gain a sponsor early on in your career? Didn't you actually ride Bultaco there for a while?
I did. After I figured out that the handling wasn't as good as the other bikes, even though we had that DT1, it was a little rocket ship.
Mm-hmm.
Breyer got a ride with Bultaco, and it was a very cool bike. I got to ride it a couple times. I thought, yep, that's my next bike. So I went down to Steve's Bultaco in Van Nuys, California.
Yes.
And bought a bike, and a 250. And the thing, instantly went back to EC's shop, and he taught me a lot about porting until I could do it myself, and made that thing really fast. And then Steve Bultaco came up with the new open bikes in 1971, 326s I think they were, and said they would sponsor me on one if I wanted to run the open class, and I jumped on that. So that was my first sponsor. Did really well with that bike.
Now, at that time, according to my research, and I hope I get it correct most of the time, it looks like a lot of those races were at Bay Mare.
Yeah, most of my races actually were at Indian Dunes.
Oh, at Indian Dunes, okay.
Yeah, I was, probably 30 minutes away from Indian Dunes, up in Valencia,
Right.
California, and really got to know those guys up there that ran that track and did really well at that track. And then a lot of the experts started going there, and started, getting involved with all of them in Indian Dunes. But went to a lot of other California tracks, Bakersfield, and in California, you could race 4 nights a week,
Yeah.
4 days a week. At Irwindale and Ascot, a Saturday race at Indian Dunes, and Sunday, Saddleback, Bay Mare, Carlsbad.
Oh.
So spent most of my week either working on the bike or racing in California, having a great time, and then and I started getting closer and closer with Breyer. Breyer was helping me a lot. We would go to the races together.
Now, I guess it was shortly after that, or probably during that time, was when you first met Jim Pomeroy, Tom Rapp, Marcel Wirtz. What was it like meeting Jim Pomeroy, and how did that conversation arise between you guys? What was that about?
Well, first of all, Breyer got a factory ride, full factory ride, instead of just bikes. And they wanted to, he had his choice to find a mechanic.
Okay.
And he knew I was doing cylinders, and he knew what I was doing with my bike, and he asked me if I would help him for the Interim series. And I thought, that'd be kind of cool, even though I wouldn't be able to race a lot. I would go with Breyer. And we went a couple Inter-Am races at first, and then a couple Trans Am races. And back in, I was watching, because I was riding we were with Bultaco, I was watching, we got friends with Tom Rapp and his mechanic, Richard Nolte. And I was watching this other guy from Yakima, Washington, Jim Pomeroy, with all his finishes in the Inter-Am series and the Trans Am.
Right.
And his 250s were just like slow. And, he was getting like 12s and 13s. But when he did the 500 Nationals and they put him on open bikes, he was doing real well with little horsepower. So I remember in 1972 at Saddleback Park, he finished 4th on a 500.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked by his pits. He knew who we were because we had pits like 2 trucks down. And Breyer did well that year. That day, I don't remember what we got. We were in the top 10. And I just said, I joked to Pomeroy. He was sitting there with his in the back of the truck, putting his boots back on. And I said, if they'd ever give you any horsepower, you'd do pretty good, because you do good in the 500s, but you need a lot of horsepower in the 250s.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, if you ever want get some horsepower in that thing, look me up. And I said, and if you don't believe me, watch Breyer's bike. And he didn't say nothing, he just laughed. And now
Yes.
And I was not there, and won the Spanish Grand Prix. When he came back for the interims, after he was in Europe for almost 3 months before that race. He was sick of Europe. He wanted to come home, but they, wanted to put him in that Grand Prix before he came home, figuring, he would probably finish somewhere in the top 20. Well, after he raced and won it, he was a hero and had to stay.
So then,
he finally got to come home in the interims, and that's where I saw him again.
Okay, that's the piece of the puzzle I was wondering about.
Yeah.
So you
we met again at Baymere. Me and Breyer were there.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I was racing there too. And he came over to me and said, I'll never forget what you said about horsepower. He said, I'm interested. And I said, yeah, look me up anytime. And that was all we said. So about a week later, he calls up the factory in the United States, the importer,
mm-hmm.
and asked, get my phone number. And he called me, said, hey, I'm going back up to Yakima before I go back to Europe. I'd like to talk to you. Can we meet somewhere? And I said, I'm going to be at Indian Dunes on Wednesday riding my bike, doing some testing. On your way up, why don't you stop at Indian Dunes? He says, I'll do that. Sure enough, he met me. And he sat down and talked to me and told me that what he was doing in Europe and how things were going, how tough it was. And the number one thing that he really wanted to get his career going over there was he couldn't understand the Spanish mechanics or the Spanish engineers. See that? He wanted an American speaking mechanic. And he liked what I did and liked the idea of getting a lot of horsepower under him. So he made me an offer. And I went to Breyer and told him, what I should, I didn't want to hang Breyer up in the middle of the Interim series. Breyer said, no, an opportunity like that, you got to take it.
So
called him up and says, I'll be there.
So at that time now, Arnie, Luis Flores, who everyone knows as Rubio, that's Jim Pomeroy's mechanic, and now Jimmy wants you over there in to be his mechanic. So now, is it you and Rubio both attending to Jim's bike, and how did that all shake out?
Yeah, I wasn't sure how that was gonna work. I mean, I was supposed to meet them in Russia, and I had a flight to Finland,
mm-hmm.
but they couldn't get me a visa in time to get into Russia.
Okay.
At that time, it was Rubio, the Spanish mechanic, and Jimmy in an old Mercedes truck, basically,
mm-hmm.
and two bikes. And after the Russian race would be Finland, and I figured, well, I'll fly there and meet him there. And I didn't know who Rubio was at the time, other than I heard he was a good mechanic. And he was the one that worked on Jimmy's bike during the Spanish Grand Prix. That's where kind of he got involved.
Mm-hmm.
So when I finally got to, they got back to Finland, and I met everybody, and everybody introduced me to the team and stuff. First time I met Rubio, and I could tell right away there was going to be some jealousy issues going on. So my thing was, you know what, for the rest of the 73 GP series, I'm just going to kind of watch and monitor. And I told Jimmy that. Jimmy was fine with that. And I said, I'll learn, see what the engineers are doing, see what Rubio's doing, kind of, stand back.
Right.
So, they put me on changing tires and washing the bike and doing the air cleaners and stuff, that really wasn't important at the time. But that was fine. We didn't hit it off. We weren't great, but let's just say we did become good friends.
Right. Yeah, I could see there being a bit of a conflict there, and it only stands to reason. Plus the language barrier, and I don't know. Well, I don't think it needs much of an explanation there. But Arnie, you were actually at the Bultaco factory in Spain. What were the conditions there at the factory? What was a day at that factory like?
Yeah, before when we ended the series, we drove all the way back to Spain. We normally based I found out we based ourselves out of
Okay.
But we went back to Spain and to kind of finish up the season and kind of get ready for the Trans Am series.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got back to Spain, I was expecting this big, beautiful factory.
Okay.
Boy, was I surprised.
What was it like?
When I got there, it was like big clay walls around the place. And I noticed, the first thing I noticed when I'm driving up on a dirt road to the factory, they had broken glass on top of these walls where they would put the broken glass into in fresh cement.
Yeah.
And just let it dry, and that would be their bottlers, so people couldn't crawl over the walls. And I thought, I don't know what I'm getting into. When I got into the factory and they gave me a tour, I was just shaking my head thinking, I'm not sure I did the right thing. All the lathes and all the mills and the machinery were bolted down into clay floor. There was no concrete.
Oh my.
Everything was dusty, really dusty. Everyone had a Vino bag hanging on their lathes and mills, and about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I noticed everybody starts singing, and then Rubio explained to us that after 2 o'clock, you're not going to get nothing done. The Vino bags were empty. So this is an everyday occurrence. And then the restaurant right outside where everybody goes was like flies and warm milk sitting outside.
Oh.
I can get a cold glass of milk anywhere. And I looked at Jimmy and I said, you know what, I'm ready to go home. And he laughed at me and he said, this is what we got to put up with. This is why we stay in Belgium. We don't come to Spain until we need parts.
So you and Jimmy did you guys live in Spain, or you guys lived in Belgium?
We did not live in Spain. We got out of Spain every chance we could.
I see.
We would go there. Actually, unfortunately, he would send me there to build bikes, and then meet me there, to test the bikes. And he'd fly out back to Belgium, and I'd have to drive the truck to Belgium.
Now, at that factory where you were, putting the bikes together and making some decisions on how that was going to be done, were they receptive to any changes you wanted to make, or how did that work?
That was the big thing. In '73, I told Jimmy you finished 10th overall, which was good. And I said, you finished 10th overall in the world without any horsepower. Everybody's blowing away. Harkin Anderson's Yamaha was a rocket ship. And Harry Everett's Poop was a rocket, even Falta's CZs were fast. I would say Jimmy probably had mid-pack horsepower. It wasn't, when I looked at the cylinders, there was nothing really special about them other than they were very clean inside, other than, from a factory.
Yeah.
I mean, from a production cylinder, there was nothing real special about them. And so, I wanted to, do some work on them, asked if I could do some cylinders, and found out very quick that they were very proud people, and they don't like changes. Mm. They certainly didn't like changes from America for whatever reason. So one of the problems we had is clutches would slip, the metal clutches. Rubio would put extra heavy springs in it, which would just thrash Pomeroy's wrist every time he tried to clutch it. But it was the only way to keep the bikes from any kind of horsepower at all, make clutches slip. And the suspension was half-ass. It just wasn't a comfortable bike to ride that fast. And they believed, that they could build a bike that would be competitive for GPs for '74. In '73, they weren't expecting to ride. Their fastest rider was Marcel Works from Belgium.
Yes.
On a Bultaco. And so they never had anybody on a Bultaco that was that fast, or that would punish a bike that much.
The way Jimmy did.
Yeah. So, they were, we'll build a bike, and they promised me, because Jimmy went to him and says, let Arnie build a bike. Well, we want to import some clutches, I want to, import some, I wanted Pisani pipes, I wanted Barnett clutches, I wanted Fox shocks on it, I wanted some American wheels. And then they said, no, we're not doing that. This is a Spanish bike. So they promised me that we would have a good bike that I could put together for him for 74. And as you know, by looking at the records, that didn't work out well. We finished 14th that year with 11 broken transmissions and a broken frame. I remember in Yugoslavia, we were actually leading the race. They brazed a frame together, which I was dead set against. They thought it would flex better. And over a fourth gear jump, Jimmy broke the headstock off it.
Wow. This is in Yugoslavia?
Unbelievable crash. I mean, I thought, this is it. We're done for the season. I could not believe he walked away from it. We actually brought the bike back in 2 pieces back to the pits. 11 transmission breaks. We had broken wheels. Gas tank broke and leaked. Just stupid stuff, you know, that happened in 74, I'm sorry.
So now, I believe it was, I guess it was, well, that must have been 74 also, where they sent 2 factory bikes to the U.S., but they sent Rubio to watch the bikes and you.
I'm sorry, say that again?
In 1974, that the Bultaco factory did send 2 bikes to the U.S. for the Trans Am.
Yes.
And, but they sent Rubio with the bikes, of course, because they didn't want you to make any modifications, correct?
Correct. That's correct. In 74, I mean, the year started out good. I was able to get to Baymere Harley Davidson early.
Right.
When we got back to the United States, and I wanted to build them because there was going to be this Supercross race, first indoor Supercross race.
Yeah.
And I thought, I know the perfect horsepower for this thing. You know, it's going to be a little short. You know, I figured a little short motocross track. So we took a bike and we brought the headstock in another degree. And Jimmy called the factory and said, Arnie wants to bring the headstock in a degree. And they said, if Arnie cuts that headstock or changes that frame, he's fired. And so Jimmy looked at me when he was on the telephone, and I was holding the headstock and the frame in 2 pieces, laughing at him with one hand. And Jimmy says, "Okay, we'll leave it alone." So I did that, and I put a horsepower cylinder on the frame. Made it as light as I possibly could, and he won that race at Supercross, and it was in Houston at the Astrodome. So that convinced Jimmy that, you know, he was going to put his foot down. So we put together. They let me run cylinders in '74 for Grand Prix.
Yeah.
And the GPs, and they let me do other things for international races, but the GPs we were having disastrous. You know, in '74, we were breaking transmissions, and I thought, you know what, I bet it's my cylinders, which is just too harsh on these transmissions. So I was starting to lose confidence in my ability to build a GP bike.
Yeah.
And Jimmy's the one that kind of kept me going. Says, no, keep giving me that horsepower. We'll figure this transmission thing out. So I said, you know, and then Spain was really on my case, saying, no, we're not running these things anymore. I mean, we're breaking transmissions right and left. We break 2 transmissions in 2 motos in 1 GP.
Wow.
And it was just getting ridiculous. And we were getting great hole shots, or at least top 3, you know, coming in the first corner. So I knew the power was there. And he loved it, but so I thought, you know what, maybe it is me. So I let them put their factory cylinders back on it, and heads, and so on and so forth. And Jimmy's still breaking transmissions. And then he proved to him, he says, he could break a transmission in any place of the track that he wanted. The engineers didn't believe that, so we went back to Spain and went up to the GP course where he won in '73. And sure enough, he told the engineers to stand here and stand here and stand here, and broke transmissions in front of them. So they wanted to put these compensator sprockets in, and, you know, take the edge off the transmissions and so on and so forth. I knew it was just bad gears, bad metal.
Yeah.
I knew we could get a good transmission out of California called 3B's Enterprise.
Okay.
They were the ones that invented the 1C4 speed and so on and so forth. Did a lot of NASCAR gears, but they wouldn't let me do that in 2014. I'm sorry, in 74.
In 74.
And we finished 14th
Yeah.
in the world. Disaster. And I told Timmy, maybe I'll just let the Spaniards help you again. I says, I don't think I'm helping you that much. And he's the one that told me, no, we're staying with this thing. He kept me in it. And he built my confidence back up.
I even recall, I think it was in Atlanta in 1975 Trans Am, where Jimmy broke a couple of bikes and he wound up riding a box stock, like from a showroom, or someone had a bike there at the track that was brand new, a racer. Well, do you remember that? What happened there, Arnie?
First of all, in 75, they let me go with what I wanted to do. And because Jimmy put his foot down, said, "This is it. If I have a disastrous season again in '74, he says I'm gonna do something else." He said that was embarrassing. So '75, they let me have a chance to do all the stuff I wanted to do, and we had a great year. We had a strong year in World Championship, finishing 7th, and it included a victory in Belgium, which were all three world champions were there at the GP. They had Gaston Ryan,
yes,
and DeCoster and Joel, all Belgium riders, and Arnie beat them all. So we had a great year. We came back to the Trans Am series. We were just kicking butt. We had our first moto victory by an American in a Trans Am event,
Yeah.
And then we got to Atlanta, and we got to Atlanta, and something happened where we didn't have a motor. We had the 250s there, but they didn't ship the open bikes. That was it. It was a Trans Am, and I had both 250s. We didn't have a Trans Am bike yet, and so we waited, and come race day, race practice on Saturday, we still didn't have a motor. And so I was ready to call it in, and this fan came over and wanted Jimmy to sign his bike and sign his, jerseys and everything. Said he just bought a brand new open bike, and he was so proud of, the reason he did is because he was watching Jim Pomeroy. Jimmy said, unfortunately, we're not going to race, we don't have a motor. He said, you can use my bike.
Wow.
Jimmy looked at me, he says, is that possible? And I said, no, it's a box stock bike. We'd have to change all the suspension, this and that. And I went to AMA. AMA would not let us run the 250 in the open class. And I said, it would be a big disadvantage to Jimmy, what's it going to hurt? And he said, no, it's not the rules. You got to have an open motor.
Oh.
So we borrowed the guy's motor, not the whole bike.
Oh.
We got the whole bike. I took his motor out, and I didn't have any time to do anything to the motor other than carburet it. And he put the motor in his 250, which was his indoor bike, basically. And yeah, we won that race. We walked away with it.
Unbelievable. Did you give the guy his motor back, Arnie? I hope.
Oh yeah. I said, you know what? I'll replace all the scratches and the cases and stuff like that. He goes, no way. He says, all you guys do is just sign the motor for me, and I'm going to tell everybody, Jim Pomeroy raced this motor.
That's incredible. Hey,
Yeah.
At the end of the 75 GP season, Jimmy hurt his knee pretty badly and had to really train hard to get ready for the 76 season. What did you guys do to prepare for that?
Yeah, at the end of we were doing really well in the Trans Am series. And unfortunately, he injured his knee at Fiala, the last round, which is his home, state. And I had the bike. I thought, probably the best bike that I ever built him was for Fiala. And practice, he was running great times. And I thought we had this race down. And unfortunately, in a little hairpin turn, the first gear hairpin turn, right in front of the mechanics area, he washed out on a berm, went over the berm, high-sided it, landed on his knee, and it tore his knee up. He was done for that season.
Yes.
And then he was heavy into motocross, and said if we ever wanted to come up for practice, he would make sure he'd get the water truck out on his track, and we could use his track for practice. So I told Jimmy, your knee gets better, we should go to Mammoth and train up in that high altitude. He was all for that. He says, I'll come down and see what it's like. We came down on crutches, and Dave McCoy kind of took him under his wing. Dave McCoy trained all these skiers, professional skiers, and said, let me get you in shape. And he did. He made Jimmy remember him walking in knee-deep snow for like 3 miles at a really fast-paced breaking trail.
Yeah.
Everybody else would walk behind him, bicycling up from 4,000 to 8,000 feet. And when it was all said and done, make a long story short, he was in better shape than I've ever seen Jimmy. Ready for the 76 season.
Yeah, and the 76 season, I mean, we're talking about competing against Heikki Mikkola, Moiseev, Harry Everts, and of course Hacken Anderson. How did Jimmy do in 76? What was the bike like?
We did excellent. We were within the top 3 all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, Jimmy finished 4th overall for the year. It was we were fighting a few equipment problems, but we also had team troubles where me and Rubio were just not seeing eye to eye, and they were letting me have more and more of the last say of what we were going to do.
Yes.
And so we were fighting, and it wasn't pretty. And the engineer, they were still on this, Team Spain thing. And the more I was changing the bike into American style, the less they liked it.
Yeah.
So we were not getting a lot of help. Franco died, the president of Spain.
Mm-hmm.
And when we went back to the factory mid-year, they were closing the factory. We heard they were closing the factory down. And then the Communist Party took over that part of Spain, in Barcelona, all the factories.
Yeah.
And they put their people in that factory. So we were all of a sudden not allowed to come home into our own factory for spare parts.
Wow.
So we gathered as much stuff as we could at Marcel Wirtz's place and finished off the season. Still was able to pull off a 4th overall with all that, that was going against us.
Yeah.
So, as everybody knows, in '77, we switched to Honda. Honda made Jimmy a really good offer.
Right. Now, before we get on with that, Arnie, this is one of the best stories I think I've ever heard. While I haven't heard them all, I've heard a lot. But do you recall, of course, Jimmy had a 76 Dodge van in Europe that year.
Yeah.
And what Grand Prix was it at where Jimmy had this van with this bitchin' stereo system in it? And then Moiseev wants to go listen to the stereo.
Yeah.
Well, what happens when Moiseev gets in that van with Jimmy?
First of all, I told Jimmy in '76 because we were doing so well, and we could get about anything we wanted out of Bultaco. I said, you know what? Let's get a really good truck instead of that diesel Mercedes that is slow as hell. And Jimmy says, yeah, I want to get a maxi van. Dodge, nobody has a Dodge maxi van. First of all, Brad Lackey said he was going to do it. Jimmy wanted to be first.
Right.
So we bought a maxi van, a '76, brand new, and we completely did the inside, California style, and we had Snap-on gave us a 10-drawer toolbox full of tools. I had welders in there. I had a generator in there. Jimmy loaded this thing down with probably a stereo that would light up the whole motocross area, when he turned it up. The thing was decked out, and I had Fox shocks, Fox forks, Answer product handlebars. I had the thing loaded with American parts, Bassani pipes, and when we loaded it into a container in Miami.
Yeah.
Shipped it to Spain. And when we got to Spain, we went down to the customs to get the truck. The truck was there. We filled out a ton of papers. Opened up the truck. It was empty.
Which,
So
yeah.
we had to start over on buying stuff and getting stuff, and it was a disaster, but we had a nice truck over there. So everybody was doing on over this truck, over this van. And it's the French Grand Prix. And first of all, if you have to understand back then, the Russian riders.
Oh my God. Hold on a second, folks. I was just disconnected. I'll get Arnie back on. Arnie, we're back. So you're in France, and the Russian riders are there. Go on.
Hold on. Are you there?
I am here. Everybody's here, Arnie.
Okay, alright. So yeah, the Russian riders, they were watched so close that even during the week during the hotel when we were working on the bike,
Yeah.
they would have to be somewhere other than where all the other teams were. They watched their riders like hawks because they didn't want anybody to check. That's what it came down to. That's not the excuse they used, but we knew that's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
So Jimmy, being a jokester about everything and pulling jokes on everybody, he invited Moisty just to come listen to the stereo. we actually went. Me and Jimmy actually parked the truck down by where the Russians were. So it was the Russians and the American team completely like a quarter mile away from everybody else. So Jimmy had the thing cranked while I was out working on the bike. And Moisty came over and Jimmy had to show him, before Moisty's superiors could see what he was doing, he got the truck, closed the door, and Jimmy turned up the stereo. Next thing I know, I heard the truck start, and Jimmy came around and slammed the back doors and ran back in the driver's seat and took off.
He left the pit area with Moisiev?
He did. And these people freaked out. They were screaming at me. I'm like, I can't understand Russian. I don't know what you're yelling at me for.
And now they're in the country. They're in the countryside somewhere in France, going to a town. Where the hell did they go?
They went to some city down there.
Yeah.
And they were gone for like 3 hours. And Jimmy took them to a bar, and they were drinking. And then they took them because they can't get American jeans. That was a big thing back there for them. Everyone to wear, have American jeans, but you're, on the communist side of the borders.
Yeah.
He came back. They were drunk for one. He had American jeans on. He had these T-shirts on. He had a Pomeroy shirt on. And they freaked out. They grabbed him like I thought they were going to put handcuffs on.
Yeah.
He's like screaming at him to leave him alone. It was Jimmy's fault. So we didn't think that he was going to be able to race anymore. But he was, I think, running second points at that time. So they had to let Moisty race. But that story spread through Europe like wildfire.
Yeah.
He kidnapped the Russians and took them away.
Yeah, I heard bits and pieces of it. I didn't know about the jeans and the T-shirt, and everybody was just under the impression that they must have been drinking somewhere. But now you've pretty much confirmed what everybody was thinking. Now, a moment ago,
they got back at it when we went to Russia. Everybody got through the border on their trucks in 10 to 20 minutes. It took me 4 hours. They made me take everything out of the truck and inspect it. And then they found the Time magazine on the dash. You can't take any red from literature in there. This is during the Cold War.
Right.
First of all, I got an American truck with Spanish plates on it and 2 Spanish carnes massage and an American passport. And I'm trying to get into Russia. So they put me in this room, which I call a jail. So I always tell people, I remember somebody asking me, tell me something that nobody knows about you. And I said, I was in a Russian jail.
How long were you in there? How long were you in there for, Arnie?
Well, about 2 hours. I called Bultaco. They let me call Bultaco, and I told them what was going on. And I don't know what they said, but about 30, 40 minutes later, they let me out. I put everything back in the truck, and they escorted us to the hotel through the backcountry. We had to follow. They had the truck in front of us and truck in back of us.
Wow. Now, Arnie, let's ease into this next story because I want to make sure that I understand it right and that we can explain it to the listeners correctly. Was there a point, I think it was in 76 or probably 76, because you guys were with Honda in 77, where there was rumor that Honda was going to buy Bultaco and you guys thought maybe the quality of the bikes were going to be better if Honda had their hand in the Bultaco factory. What exactly happened there?
Yeah, that was the beginning of '77.
Okay.
When Jimmy signed with Honda, when he went back to Japan, I did not. I stayed American at American Honda working on bikes. He went to Japan and he heard a rumor or heard in a meeting that Honda was interested in buying Bultaco. And Jimmy's first thought was, how cool would it be to go back to Bultaco with Honda's backup,
Yeah.
with Honda's technology. Because they promised Jimmy when he signed on with Honda, and Jimmy wanted to go back to Europe, and that was his big thing. And they said, okay, but we want somebody here in the United States that can compete and beat Hannah. Hannah's killing us. And so that's what we want you to do. We want you to run the Nationals and the indoor series for 1 year, and we'll send you back to, you win the national championship, we'll send you back to Europe.
So, obviously, Arnie, obviously, Arnie, the Bultaco Honda deal never came to be, and I think in the long run, what Honda did was they just bought up those, Montesa and Osa and Bultaco, and basically shut them down. Or did the recession there, or did the economy, what really changed that? Because a lot of people just feel that Honda went in and shut down their competition. Or was there an economic downturn there that caused that?
It was, and they did. We heard that they did buy in '77. They did buy or purchase part of the Bultaco factory.
Mm-hmm.
So we were more or less concentrating on as quick as Jimmy tested the 250 Hondas before the Nationals. I said we have got to get back to Europe on this bike. These bikes are unbelievable. I don't know, touch nothing. And we'll win a national. We'll win a World Grand Prix with this bike.
But they wanted Jimmy in. But they wanted you guys to stay. They wanted you guys to stay here to compete with Hannah in the 250s.
Yeah. So I thought, well, piece of cake. We'll come home. We'll win a national championship. Win some indoor stuff. We'll blow Hannah away, and we'll go back to Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, mid-season, I looked at Jimmy after we had 11 seconds behind Hannah's 21 first motos. I looked at Jimmy and said, we're not going to beat this kid.
I remember.
Jimmy got a little pissed at me about that. I said, you got 11 seconds behind. We're going to end up second overall in the series.
Yeah.
And we can't beat him. I've seen you get a whole shot if you can come to the pack. We're not going to beat this kid on the American soil. I said, let's go back to Europe. So when Jimmy went back to the Honda people and said, I want to get back to Europe, this is not going to work. They refused to spend another year and try that. We're going to beat Hannah. You're going to stay here another year. That kind of, then Jimmy started thinking about going back to Bultaco because he was under the understanding that Honda had bought Bultaco.
Yeah. Well, now let's back up just a second here. Jimmy went to Honda in '77. You went to Honda also, but you were not Jimmy's mechanic directly when you got there. How did you get to Honda, and who were you the mechanic for when you did get there?
Well, I did not go back to Honda. I went back up to Orlando Race because when Jimmy came to me and said, I have signed a great contract with Honda.
Mm-hmm.
We have one little issue. You're not going to be able to come on board with me right away. They're giving me a mechanic, Merle Anderson. He's a good mechanic.
Yes.
And he's been with Honda for a long time, but he's leaving sometime mid-season. And they said, I could pick you up afterwards. He said, are you okay with that? And I said, hey, this is your career, If you get on Honda, let's go for it. I said, I'm going to go back up to Mammoth. And I wanted to the USGC in Carlsbad, and you'll be signed on. Although that'll be Phil's last race, which was kind of cool because Jimmy won that first moto.
Yeah, it was. It was. So
I was signed on from that time on.
So who were you the mechanic for at that point?
That's not right.
Oh no, I thought you were Gary Simmick's mechanic in the beginning.
No, that's after. No, I stayed with Jimmy. He was 77, 78.
Oh, okay.
And then it was 79. Jimmy wanted to return to the championships in Europe, and they said no. He left Honda. I stayed with Honda because I didn't know where Jimmy was going to go, and I told him he had an offer from KTM, so he wanted to go back to Europe with KTM, and he wanted to go check out Voltaco because he thought, now's the perfect time with the Honda buyout of Voltaco.
Yeah.
And coming from Honda, they said, he had a perfect time to go and see if he could get on with Voltaco. He said, meanwhile, stay with Honda, and I'll call for them. So they put me with Gary Simmons, which was kind of cool. I like Gary.
Now, tell me this. I think that Gary and Jimmy, I think they have two different personalities. They're two different people. What is it like to be setting up a bike for Jim Pomeroy as it is to be setting up a bike for Gary Simmons?
Completely different.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking. Gary probably. I've heard. That there could be a seat foam density issue, and it's going to have to be changed.
Yeah.
So tell me what that's like, Arnie.
With Jimmy, me and Jimmy kind of grew up together in professional racing thing, if you will, and we got to know each other. Jimmy was, he was not very particular about a lot of things. He liked his power, he liked his front suspension, he liked his special front tires, but he kind of left everything up to me and said, do you think that's working well for us? And I would say yes or no. With Gary, Gary liked to try a lot of different things. And like you say, even if it was the density of the seat,
yeah,
he'd like to try something a little softer, try something a little harder. He worked the mechanic hard. And it was tires. With Jimmy, I have two different types of tires ready to go. If it was a mud race or if it was a hard track, blue race, I call it. But with Simic, I had probably eight wheels with different tires on it, different compounds.
Yeah.
And by the time practice was over, we'd go through at least 6 of them.
Wow.
But being that precise, Gary could hit his marks around the track every single time he hit his marks, exactly where he was supposed to be. He was a very, very, very precise rider, and I did like that, Gary.
So Arnie, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, Arnie, because a lot of us, amateur or expert racers, guys who are not, of course, professional, we all have questions about works bikes and how certain things happen. So, at what point of the season, or when does Honda ship you a bike? When do you see it for the first time? How do you, and whether it's Gary Semrix or Jim Pomeroy, how do you guys shake that bike down? When does all that happen?
So, you probably know American Honda is in Gardena, California. That's where the importership is. And the race department is it was a nice building. Not that big. Well, there was 6 of us in there. 6 mechanics, 6 riders, 6 benches, and so on and so forth. So when we got new bikes, the new bikes came in, they would all come in pretty much within a week, beginning of the season.
Yeah.
They all have, Pomeroy's name on it, Marty Smith's name on it, or Croft's name on it, Warren Reed's name on it. And we were, from that time on, we would unpack it, put it together, and we weren't able to do a lot to them until we went through a test. So Honda would rent out Saddleback or Carlsbad or a little place called Hondaville. They would rent the track and make sure the track was completely closed. And we would have these bikes all in our trucks. All the trucks would arrive and put them all in a row. And we would test for 3, sometimes 4 days in a row up there. Suspension and tires and cylinders and pipes, and until each rider kind of liked what the combination that they would give us. And they did give us a lot of combinations at the time. They would not just send us a bike, they would send us a bunch of parts. Keep in mind back then, these bikes were all hand-built.
Yes.
In Japan. These were $25,000, $30,000 bikes back then. And everything was hand machined or titanium or something very special. When we first got the CR500, I mean, everyone was just blown away. The year before that with the 480, nobody could ride that bike with the power it had. I mean, it was just the wrong power. But when the CR500 came out, everybody was like, yes, we got this championship.
Yeah.
But, and they would give us, because Jimmy was riding the 250s, I'd get like 2 bikes right away. There'd be 3 or 4 cylinders, 3 or 4 pipes, different suspension setups, and so on and so forth. So we would do a lot of testing. And even after the series started, which we were supposed to have our bikes kind of set with what we needed, when we got home, we would do more testing because Honda would send more stuff over.
I see.
Unfortunately, a lot of times they would come to the track and with like a new pipe or something, and they would hand me a new pipe and say, put this on. And you know, back then, if you were not Japanese, I always said you didn't really have a lot of authority to say no. And even the riders, you know, they were a little bit nervous about saying no.
Yeah, but
except for Jim.
Yeah, but Arnie.
Quite strict.
Yeah, but Arnie, you know what it is though too? I'm wondering myself, how much can you do? If the factory comes over, this Japanese guy comes over and tells you to put this pipe on this bike and you try it, and the pipe sucks, I mean, what do you do?
Well, I'll tell you what happened. I put in red bike, and Jimmy they told me to put a pipe on. They guaranteed it was going to give us more low ends and so on and so forth. And they showed me all the specs. They're very precise. They give you a book of a pipe that they tested, a book of all the test sheets, you know.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, put a pipe on for the first moto, and the mount broke midway while Jimmy had a really good lead. And him and Weiner was battling out, and something happened to Weiner. Jimmy had a good lead, and I thought, you know what, we're going to I don't think Hannah could catch us. And then the pipe broke. The mount broke on the pipe and started dragging on the ground. And that kind of killed that moto. Jimmy came in, he was so mad, he took this stick and drew a line all the way around the truck, in the dirt.
Yeah.
He said, I don't want, and he got on top of my truck and yelled, he says, I want everybody's attention, I don't want any Japanese people to cross that line. He said, this is Arnie's area and Arnie's area only. Does everybody understand? And he got off the truck and went in the truck and went in his motorhome and slammed the door.
And that was it for all the factory Japanese guys from Honda. Nobody was allowed past that line, huh?
Well, they didn't want him after Jimmy. The Japanese guys were kind of scared of him. He didn't. They'd never seen him with an attitude. He was always smiling, always the jokes, joking around. But boy, that was the first time they saw the ugly side of him.
So Arnie, what was your last year at as a mechanic in motocross?
In motocross or with Honda?
Let's go with Honda first, sure.
At the end of 1979.
Okay.
After the series is over. Jimmy was still looking for a ride. And we went back to KTM, didn't work out for him. We went to Honda, we went to Boltaco, and for whatever reason, Honda was not supporting Boltaco, and they were letting the factory close.
Yeah.
So he went to Beta, and Beta made him an offer. He tried his 2 races for Beta, and it was just not quality bike for Jimmy. He would destroy that bike, in half a lap. So he came back to the United States, didn't have a ride. Meanwhile, I tried to build an independent team, and a guy that was the money man, supposedly had a big construction company, was going to give us a lot of money to start like an LOP team.
Yes.
We called it PD2. And he had this vitamin company that he owned, and he was using the vitamin company, you know, to build the motocross team, and told me, give me 3 or 4 of the best riders that we could get for a privateer team. Gave me a lot of money to start it out, and I thought, well, I'll try that. And got Jimmy Ellis, good friend of mine, and talked to George Ellis, his dad.
Yeah.
And we signed up. We got a factory ride with, not factory, but Yamaha gave us all the bikes we wanted for the team and all the parts we needed. But unfortunately, they were stock bikes, and they figured that I would still be able to make them go fast. And I got Arlo England, and then we got Steve Stackable, and then I got Marty Tripes for a 5-race series. And that was our team. And as we built the team up and got the trucks all done, painted and everything, and everybody had 2 bikes and happy. Jimmy actually, Jimmy Ellis on the first indoor at LA Coliseum, we went to completing the first moto, and he broke the frame.
Jimmy Ellis did?
I've never seen a frame broke like that.
So how
We
long?
found out that the money wasn't legal, to say the least,
I follow you.
and the team shut down. I apologize to everybody and let everybody keep their trucks and their bikes and close it down.
Now, Arnie, just for a moment here, I've got to go back to the Honda days because, and I've got to ask you something. You know, it was tragic news with the passing of Nancy and Marty Smith this week. We were all heartbroken and we're all still in shock. But you were there with Marty at Honda for a few years. Can you share a Marty Smith story with us?
Yeah. That when that news broke, that tears don't come to my eyes very easily. That did.
Yeah.
Marty was first of all probably the closest person for a friend that I had with at Honda was Dave Arnold. We got along great. We traveled a lot together. He helped me tremendously when I came on.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, Dave was Marty's mechanic from day one.
Yes.
And just the professionalism of those two, just it's exactly how Jimmy and I were. So we really hit it off. So as the indoor races were becoming more and more of the double jump thing, believe it or not, the first person, when we go to an indoor race, everybody would watch Warren Reed. Because Warren was the first one that would try these long double jumps. And sure enough, he would, more times than not, he would make a double jump that no one even think about it. And then everybody would say, well, if Warren's going to do it, now we got to do it. And that happened race after race after race. Everybody watched Warren practice. And sure enough, at LA, it was Los Angeles, yeah. Warren, once again, pulled off one of these long doubles. And so Marty would have to do it. And he did it. And not a lot of riders were doing it. Riders crashed pretty hard trying it. Well, Jimmy was never into these double jumps. He did not like these new indoors. He called it more of a show than a race for spectators. And he hated these he was freaked out. He had a head case against these long jumps. So he was doing these single jumps, and everybody's doing the doubles. Probably half the top 10 was doing doubles now. And Marty saw it. So Marty in the pit, when we came after the first practice, he came over to our truck and he said, Jimmy, he said, watch, I want you to come over and stop at that double the next practice.
Yeah.
Watch me and Warren. He said, watch me come over this jump. He said, I got it down, it's not that hard, this and that. Just watch me. And then he said, just stand there for 2 laps and watch me. Watch when I hit the gas. So Jimmy did. Watched him. Marty hit him perfect. But then Marty stopped to talk to him. And Jimmy told me later, when they were talking together out there during practice, he told Jimmy to go do it. And he was going to sit there and watch it. To watch Marty, and when Marty gave the twist of the throttle with his hand, he said, hit it on in flip gear. And Jimmy came around the next lap and hit it. Just as Marty switched his wrist, perfect. He hit the double and went over it perfectly. Just room to spare. And he was so happy. He was throwing his arms up in the air. Well, when they got back in the pit, they both jumped off their bikes. They gave each other a high five. They gave each other a hug. They're jumping around like those two little kids, you know?
Yeah.
For the first time having candy.
It's,
From that time on, they were pretty close.
it's an incredible story, Arnie, and it speaks volumes about Marty Smith. He was so generous. You know, he was a fierce competitor, but he was such a generous person when it came to helping people like that. And I was just reading a story the other day where Jeff Ward was moving up through the ranks, and it was his first 500 GP, first 500 national, and Marty had gone over to help him and tell him where to line up and whatnot, and Jeff had a really good day that day. But I want to thank you for sharing that Marty Smith story, and of course our condolences to all the Marty Smith fans, and of course to his family. Arnie, there's two other things I got to get to with you, and I want to get to them quickly. The first one is the most recognizable school in America for a motorcycle mechanic to go to is the Motorcycle Mechanics Institute. Now, I don't know how many people know this, but Arnie Beaman, you actually started the Motorcycle Mechanics Institute in Phoenix over 40 years ago. How did that come about? How did that come about?
After the PDQ thing did not blossom, if you will, I went back to California.
Mm-hmm.
A guy that was in college as an IBM specialist. He was a wizard. He was an unbelievable person for computers, and they called him a genius. Well, he didn't want to work for IBM, and he called me up and says, "I heard you got this great, your Arnie Beaman, this great name and stuff." He said, "I could really use you. I'm starting a motorcycle mechanics school." And I said, "Where?" And he says, "Phoenix. Come and look at it." And so I drove out from Los Angeles to Phoenix, looked at this school, which was not much. It was in the back of a gas station. And they had a couple 350 Honda motors there. And I looked at them and go, "No, this isn't a good deal. You shouldn't buy this." And he said, "Well, let me think about it." And I went back to California. He called me and said, "Good news." He said, "I bought that school, and there's more good news. You're the director of training." And I said, "We're going to work in that gas station?" He goes, "No." He says, "I bought this land. We're putting these big modular trailers in, and so on and so forth. Why don't you come help me out, put this thing together?" And that's how it started. Became the largest motorcycle mechanics school in the world.
Yeah, and it still is. It's just an amazing facility.
Yeah.
Now, you were also, Arnie, involved with Harley Davidson for like 30 years. What did you do with Harley?
Well, first of all, Harley was our first sponsor at the school.
Ah.
They actually said, "You know what? The time has come where mechanics can't just mechanics used to be able to walk into a motorcycle shop, Honda, Harley, whatever, and say, 'I want to become a mechanic,' and they say, 'What's your qualifications?' They say, 'Well, I was able to put my lawnmower motor into a mini bike, and it didn't run,' and then say, 'You're hired.' Well, then, this thing called liability became
an issue.
The national
Sure.
buzzword for lawyers, and they realized that mechanics probably need some factory training before they could work in a dealership. And that's where MMI came in. Harley realized that right away. So they started sending us bikes. They sent me a Sturgis. They sent me a couple sports shirts and some motors that we made into training aids. And then they came down like 3 or 4 or 5 months later and watched our teaching and was really impressed with what we were doing. Our classes were full. And you could take a 15-week basic class, and if you count that was 70% or better, you could take an elective. One of the electives was Harley Davidson, which most of the mechanics went to. So after they reviewed the school, it wasn't long after that they called me, maybe an offer to come up and look at their school, which was very old and run down, and see what I could come up with. So I went up there for 2 weeks and looked it over, made a whole bunch of suggestions, wrote up a whole program for them, came back to the school in Phoenix. A week later they called me up and said, "How would you like to work for us? We'll put you in charge of the school up here." And I thought, that would look good on my resume. So I worked for Harley Davidson.
Yeah.
And so my first week I worked for him, not a lot of people know this.
Mm-hmm.
13 owners just bought it back. And the CEO is the person that called me, got me a long deal. And my first paycheck bounced. And he said, yeah, run it through again, it'll go. And that was my career. And I worked 30 years there. I worked 17 years in technical service.
Yep.
And then 14 years in the Harley Owners Group division.
Wow.
Putting on all the big rallies and running the demo fleets. Yeah, it was a great. You think I was just talking to my significant other Lynn about this whole program that I was going to talk to you about.
Yes.
And my whole life has been motorcycles.
Mm-hmm.
It all started with racing motocross. I haven't known anything else other than I love boats.
But yeah, but see, Arnie, there is something else, and I believe if I have this correctly, you went on a little fishing trip when you were about 8 years old, and you said to your dad or whoever it was you were with that someday you're going to live on a boat. And in fact, today you live on a yacht and you do something in the yacht business. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, when I was 8 years old in California, my dad built a boat actually in his garage.
Ah.
Actually, a 32-foot boat.
Wow.
Out of Mechanics Illustrated magazine. And my dad was just that kind of person. And he took us to Balboa, me and my brother. And took us out in his boat fishing. This thing had a Johnson motor, an old Green Johnson motor on one side and an old Mercury motor on the other, and they were connected with a 2x4. That's kind of boat this was. We went out in the ocean with it, and everyone else would have been scared to death on this boat. No radios, no communication, no lights, no nothing. Just fishing rods. And I fell in love with it. I thought to myself, you know what, this is my life. Someday I'm going to live on a boat.
And you do now, don't you?
I do. Actually, the last 4 years on Harley Davidson, and 6 years on Harley Davidson before I retired.
Yeah.
And really quick story, I bought a sailboat, a big sailboat, a 42-foot Hunter sailboat at the Chicago show. I had no idea anything about sails. And everybody said, you can't just go out and buy a sailboat like that. And I said, I fell in love with this boat. It's gorgeous inside. Big bed, stoves and microwave, air conditioning. So, real quick story, my first time in spring, when the ice melted off Lake Michigan, took it out. I could motor it out. I knew I could drive a boat. I did not sail. I had the manuals out. I lifted all, I figured out how to get all the sails up. And the boat wouldn't move. The bubbles in the water were passing me out. The boat wasn't going anywhere. And I had huge sails, a 60-foot mast on the bank. And the boat wasn't doing nothing. I got aggravated and put all the sails down, pulled everything up and motored back. But I didn't realize that the people at the marina, at the club, were all watching me with binoculars laughing.
Well, what was the problem?
Well, it was April 1st, it was breaking ice, and no one was out other than me. So this guy comes over, which turned out to be the guy that taught me my captain's license. He was a Coast Guard captain. He said, I want to give you your first lesson, it's going to be free. And I said, what is it? What happened? What did I do wrong? He said, you see that windsock up there that's just laying flat? You have to have wind. Like, no, we have a sailboat. There's no wind today. I go, yeah, I kind of forgot about that.
Yeah. But
That's not starting. When I retired, brought the sailboat down here to Florida, going to go to the Bahamas, wanted to spend 2-3 months in the Bahamas cruising around. I waiting for a weather window, and it didn't happen for 2 weeks. And then Lynn, my significant other, she ended up going to the Bahamas with me, and make a long story short, we decided for 2 people, the 42-foot yacht wasn't big enough. So I sold it and bought a 60-foot house. Fell in love with that, and actually that's for sale right now. But I started my own brokerage called B North Yacht Sales.
B North Yacht Sales?
B North.
Yeah.
B as in boy. And the reason it's B North is when I was at Harley Davidson, Willie G. Davidson used to call me B1. That was my nickname.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of stuck with me. So yeah, B North Yacht Sales. And it's kind of fun. Keeps me busy. he gives me a lot of satisfaction to be out in the middle of the ocean, knowing, you know, that I worked on this and it's running because I did it.
Yeah. Well, Arnie.
Yeah, other than that, my whole career's been motorcycles.
Arnie, it's been an interesting hour plus, and I want to thank you for taking the time to speak with me today, for sharing stories about Jim Pomeroy, telling us about the Voltaco factory, and I'm sure there's hours, maybe days of things that you could still talk about, and maybe sometime in the future we will do that, okay?
Yeah, I would definitely do that. You know, Jimmy and Marty were taken away too soon, but hopefully, I miss Jimmy every day.
I'm sure you do.
Every day I think about Jimmy. We became best of friends and brothers. But hopefully Marty and Jimmy are together and they're bench racing or racing right now.
Let's hope so.
That's the good part. That's what makes me fun.
You got
I
it.
thank you, Joe, for the interview.
You're welcome.
Kind of fun. And I hope a lot of people got something out of it.
I'm sure they did, Arnie, and anyone that's listening, if you want to listen to it again, you can listen to it anytime on Facebook. But right now, I want to thank our guest today, Arnie Beaman. Arnie, be well.
Thank you, man.
Thanks, man. Well, that's it for our interview with Arnie Beaman this afternoon. I want to thank everybody for listening to Vintage Motocross Radio. I want to thank our sponsor, Preston Petty Products. If you get a moment, go over and visit their website. They're, of course, on Facebook, Instagram, and at PrestonPetty.com. You can see our Wednesday show, Vintage Motocross Q&A. That'll be this Wednesday. We'll be returning at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Till then, thank you all for listening. This is Joe Abadi. We'll see you next week.